guess I would just make a comment to that. I think that we all consider cost saving measures, and we do hear about taxes, and I respect your comment. I hope you have other avenues such as a whistleblower policy that might protect you from something other than just this audience. I don't think the Board of Finance is in a position to do anything, other than to continue to look at cost-saving measures. I think that we have historically operated under a constant oversight of this to the best that we can, but I also think that it's reflective of, I hear that people leave town because of taxes and their taxes are too high, and I also hear that people leave town because that Clinton doesn't offer the programming that other towns offer. And it is exemplary. I did look at some data, and while there are some people who expect it to go down a certain rate based on the enrollment, surrounding towns have had much steeper enrollment declines than us. And they've also, and Clinton has had the lowest increase in its education budget in the past 5 years compared to surrounding towns. So they've lost more people, yet they still recognize that, well, it's not that they recognize, I think what that is a testament to is the cost containment efforts. While we have not gone negative or zero, we have not gone to a 5%, 6%, 7% increase that some of these other towns have. So, it is, I do hear that we don't have an athletic trainer at our practices. We don't have a jazz band at the high school. There's so much that we don't have. And when we compete for a tax base in order to share the burden, these other towns are getting it. So I think that, I appreciate, and I hope the audience and the board can appreciate some of these efforts that are made. And I know we go line by line, and, honestly, the snow plowing thing, I kind of thought of that too. If there was any way to the spirit of the law that you're representing that requires maybe the Board of Finance to suggest, and I read that law as to suggest non-educational. So non-educational, snow plowing might fit in there. I'd suggest that we do own snow plows. You probably should talk to each other. But I live off of Egypt Lane. I really appreciate the fact that Egypt Lane is plowed right away when I get home because I won't make it home. So, what's more important, getting the kids to school the next day or plowing my street? They're both important. So you guys may have to duke that out. So that's my thing, and I personally think that at this requested increase, it is minimal, especially if you look at what some of the surrounding towns are doing and how we do have to compete for those people. Not only, we want those families moving in to spread our tax base, but we don't want people moving out. And we don't want people moving out for taxes either, but they are paying more taxes in Madison, regardless of the mill rate, or Old Saybrook, depending on what they're buying. So that's just my comment.
I appreciate your comments. But since you brought up this issue of the surrounding towns, in the rankings, our school system ranks in the lower half.
Yeah, it does. I know.
Just all of the surrounding towns rank higher. Chester, Madison, Guilford, Old Saybrook, East Lyme, Deep River, Essex, Westbrook, Brantford, Waterford. They all outrank us, and they're in the top quarter in the state of Connecticut.
That's consistent with my message.
And
they're still spending, and they spend a lot
They-
more money than
That's
we do.
consistent with what we heard at the beginning, that when you spend money, you get
Better out.
better results.
well, how is being in the lower half of ranking better results?
They spend more money than we do.
They are spending more money than we are. That's the issue.
There's no correlation between cost per pupil and performance.
There's also
That's ridiculous.
a factor
That's
that's not
utterly
included in
ridiculous.
any of that, and that is
The data is clear.
household
Data is
income.
not clear.
And Clinton is very low when compared with every one of the towns you mentioned. Guilford, Madison,
This
Old
has to
Saybrook.
do with graduation rates and success of the students.
It also should be relevant to socioeconomic status.
That's exactly right.
Socioeconomic
You
status
take a
is
great Clinton
definitively
analysis.
linked to
Westbrook,
academic
what about
outcomes.
And Brantford doesn't have, Brantford has like 3,000 condominiums.
Brantford's the only one on there.
No, Deep River, Waterford? Anyway,
Waterford's much higher.
The teachers a lot more too.
line items, Board of Education.
I just have one comment that kind of dovetails with Val's comment. The adjusted operating budget for the Board of Ed this year is $31,283,426, according to the ledger. So 1% of that is $312,000. Now, I would sign up for a 1% surplus every year for as long as I'm on the Board of Finance. Because budgeting for $31 million and hitting it that close should be commended. So I think the surplus has been about 411,000, and the variation has been 29 million to 31 million, so you're still under 2%. So, and everyone that we interviewed for the finance manager and for the business manager, they all said the same thing. You're coming in at 3%, you're doing a good job.
We're on operating budget. Any more comments from the board? From the Board of Education?
I'll just repeat what Brad said as a banker. I'm experiencing people budgeting for their companies, both private and public. For them to come in within 3 to 5%, I congratulate them on their predictability. And I congratulate the Board of Ed here for being able to predict within 2% their costing on an annual basis.
I would agree with that, except the operating surplus, has been used for capital. They've been budgeting for capital. Like this year, they've budgeted $400 and something thousand for capital, $459,000, and we give them that money, and then they take surplus and use it for capital a second. So it's like a double dip in the capital. No other department in this town does that.
We don't always give them that money. There was one year we brought it down by $300,000. They had so on a $30 million budget, they had $100,000 in capital.
But
we
that's been the policy lately.
No, every year we brought it down the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, and
we
the
brought it down.
facts contradict that too. I mean, I think the audit for the last 2 years shows that the town does spend more than what was budgeted through special town meeting, whether it's a capital expenditure or an operating expense.
In reference to the Board of Education, though,
Oh.
we're talking about their surplus.
Well, I'm talking about capital. You brought up capital.
I brought up capital. Board of Education capital.
Well, what do you want to reduce it by, Owner?
I would say that since they have a $450,000 surplus and they've overestimated, the long-term projections on the oil and gas prices, that they're going to be stable for the next year, year and a half, 2 years. There's not going to be any fluctuation in that. That appropriate reduction would be in the $600,000 range.
Where did you get that from?
450,000, basically they're going to take out their capital because they're going to have it in their surplus. They will do that, use that money for surplus, and $100,000 in savings in fuel. That's my suggestion. But
I'd actually rather look at it on the revenue line, which is another way of utilizing surplus, and I don't know when we'll get to that, but we have that allocated surplus that historically had been, I don't know, like $200,000, and we brought it down to $100,000. I mean, that's another way to sort of provide tax relief on surpluses, is that we actually budget it as revenue. So keep the budget the same, but look at the revenue lines.
yes, this board needs to be aware that we have to look down the road. This is not just a spot decision right now. And in the next 4 years, we're going to be paying $5,100,000 in debt, basically for the new school. That is not productive money. That doesn't plow any roads or pay any salaries. And the Water Pollution Control Commission is looking for $47 million in the next 5 years. These numbers are oppressive to taxpayers.
And it's the lack of
And we
looking
really
ahead
need
that
to-
caused that we
Exactly.
continually underfund capital. And so we have to build a new building. We continually underfund it. So I just hate to keep doing that.
there is going to be you've seen the bonding
Oh, yeah.
layouts.
Yeah, I know.
$3,400,000, $464,000 for debt this year. And the 47 million water pollution control. I just want to be as fiscally responsible and as careful as possible. That's all. And if there's money to be, if they have surplus monies, I think they should use them for their capital projects. They intend to anyway. That's what we were told, so.
You suggesting that they receive less money for capital projects?
Yes. Further discussion?
I think we did this exercise a while back when we started looking at their capital expenditure plan. And said, use some of the surplus to prepay or buy some of this during this fiscal year versus next. And Jack, tell me if I'm not right, but a lot of this you can't do simply because you got school buildings full of kids.
Some of it.
Yeah. And taking a quick look, is there any that you can? I'm looking at maybe the computer upgrade, I don't know. If that's hardware or that's also system, putting in new systems. I don't see anything else here. Replacing a desk and chair of somebody who's sitting there, that's kind of tough.
So, as we have suggested in the past, in the case of what we have projected here, the only area that I would suggest that we could begin to do some purchasing, pre-purchasing, if you will, would be in the computer and technology replacement.
I tried to see if there were others. I don't know if that's boiler replacement could be done. Not
It's
when you got school, it's
harder
not
to
going to
do
be
it in session.
your school. It's close to July now anyway.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? Motion? $31,747,588 Board of Education
That's
operating.
operating.
What? That's operating.
Do you need the whole thing, or just?
How would you prefer it? Together?
Operating.
Just operating,
Yeah, it's just,
line by line.
All right, I move that we approve and send to public hearing Board of Ed proposed operating budget of $31,747,588.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstentions? Capital, Board of Education, request is for $459,430, 24% over last year.
I move we send that number to public hearing.
I second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Abstentions?
the capital, $459,430.
Board of Education debt, that one you can't avoid, $833,313. Debt.
I'll make that motion. The $833,313 to public schools.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Just so you know, your total for Board of Education for those three lines is $33,040,331.
$33,400,000.
$40,000.
$40,000.
Yep, $331.
Thank you, Janet.